Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Camp Content. Joining us today is Kari Franz, a standout marketing veteran with over 35 years of experience at Fortune 100 firms, including Google Cloud, Adobe, and GoDaddy. As founder of Brigid Marketing Services, Kari excels in transforming robust ideas into dynamic, omnichannel marketing campaigns that significantly boost brand recognition and generate a steady stream of quality leads. Known for her innovative and analytical mindset, Kari has been a catalyst for phenomenal growth across national and international markets, which I'm excited to dig into, especially being from Costa Rica right now. In today's discussion, she's going to share experts on being a fractional CMO, her strategies for global go-to-market plans, and how to craft unique marketing strategies that differentiate you from your competition. If you'd like to reach out to her, all of her links will be at the bottom of the show notes here, but let's get right into it. So thank you for joining us today on the show, Kari.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I'm excited. Hey, listen, anybody with 35 years of marketing experience, I am definitely interested to talk to you because that's the real deal.
Yeah, there's quite a few marketing challenges that I have faced, and the landscape of marketing has changed dramatically, right, in my career. And there's most marketing problems I've solved successfully. So yeah, I've honed my craft over the years.
I mean, 35 years is no joke. I mean, there's just, you can't replace that with any AI model or anything like that. That's, boots on the ground experience and probably mostly problem solving, right? I feel like you get your best experience from fixing things, not when they go well. And you can't really make a lot of mistakes in a short period of time. You need 35 years to figure all that out and figure the solutions to it. That makes you invaluable. Let's talk a little bit about Brigid Marketing Services. So tell me about I thought it was Brigid because I'm Irish, and so I was like, oh, this must be an Irish thing. But tell me about the origin story of the name and how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brigid is actually the goddess of wisdom. I'm a very big yoga practitioner. We're called yogis, or yoginis for the feminine term. And she's the goddess of wisdom. So I think that's really what marketing is about, right? Through marketing research, through data, we gather a lot of information about our prospective customers and our existing customers, right? And we take those insights to develop wisdom and action items. How are we going to create products and services that they want? How are we going to communicate to them in a way that is meaningful to them? Mm-hmm. So that really resonated with me. So hence the name of my company.
I love it. So tell me a little bit about Brigid. How long has the company been around?
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. I really started it because I have worked at some major corporations, which were, kind enough to mention. I also have a strong background in financial services, working for companies like Charles Schwab and Discover Card, and honed a lot of great skills there and had access to some phenomenal tools, right? And research departments and big budgets where we could test things. And now I take all that knowledge and I offer that to medium-sized businesses because I know it works, right? We tested it out in the larger marketplace. And therefore, there's just a lot of learnings that I can bring to them and say, we should really be following this because I've seen it happen, right? I've seen the success in this. And many times, I'm used as a sounding board as well. Like, well, this is what we're thinking. And based on my experience in these companies, I can say, yeah, that's not the way I would spend your budget, your marketing budget. So Brigid, I started it to kind of relay all of that knowledge to my clients. And I just love working with founders and CEOs and those with the entrepreneurial spirit, right? I just love people with that mindset and helping them grow. It gives me great satisfaction to see their companies grow at a much quicker pace than if they've done it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's very valid because you don't know what you don't know, and
Hmm.
it's like the Peter Pan principle or whatever, where you grow to the level of your incompetence. So just because you're good at yoga doesn't mean you'd be a good yoga studio owner, or just because you're good, at something doesn't mean you're a good leader or a good boss,
Right.
right? And you're just trying to manage all these things, and you don't have access a lot of times to the people that know all these things and can just step in and go, let me just save you a bunch
Right.
of time and money here,
Right.
and this is
Or
the
the
path.
quality of vendors, right? To really know if you can execute different tactics. Like, for instance, off the top of my head, social media. Sometimes companies think that they can hire a freelancer and develop a few social posts, and that's going to help you. Well, most likely not. There's a lot more to it. So, in finding the right type of agency or vendor to help you can be done. And a lot of that I do globally. I source freelancers globally because you get a great quality, because I will not compromise on that. And yet it's a fraction of US fees.
I like that you put the emphasis on you won't sacrifice on the quality, because I agree. And I think the global market is a good one. I think it helps small businesses tremendously to be able to
Mhm.
deliver a better product.
Absolutely.
So speaking of such, what does your client profile look like? Are they international? Are they what's your average client look like?
Yeah. Well, I really target mid-sized businesses between like 20 and $80 million in revenue. Most often, but not always, they're in software as a service or software, fintech, or software, or SaaS, or wealth management firms too, because I do have that background. But I'm open for business. Some of my clients have been startup franchises. Some have been in the medical spa space. Some have been dermatologists. So it just depends what their goals are and what they're trying to achieve. Um, so I help a multitude of different size companies, but that's kind of the sweet spot.
I mean, you've definitely got the chops to back up being able to show up to the table with value there for those larger companies. Um, what 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 kind of how are you advising your clients on content marketing in this current market, or are you advising your clients to do content marketing?
Yeah, I would say in the B2B space, absolutely. I think content marketing is really important. Uh, Even kind of a precursor to that is looking at your website and making
Mm.
sure that is SEO optimized. It surprises me that so many are not still. And it's table stakes at this point. If you are not, using SEO to your advantage, you're going to fall behind, very, very quickly. I kind of, state this analogy to my clients. It's like being on the freeway and there's, billboards, but the lights aren't on. You can't see anything. That's what it's like having a website if it's not SEO optimized. People cannot find it and won't know you exist unless you type in your company's name, which how are you going to get new customers? You can't. So I think first and foremost, it's doing that. It's migrating it to like WordPress, which is more the industry standard now, not some bespoke programmed website. And there's still several out there. I mean, there's many out there. I find companies are still doing
Hmm.
that. And then using SEO keywords to develop content. If you do the analysis, you actually learn what people want to know about, based on the keywords in your company. And then the art of it is to develop content that highlights your company and what you do, but not in a sales forward way, but more in a thought leadership way, so that people are being educated. And it's a way to build trust, with your prospects, so that they start to regard you as a company that knows what the heck they're doing. You're
Hmm.
giving them something of value, and they will consider you, right, when it's time to start looking at purchases. I think it's very important to be looking at that and using SEO to your advantage.
I couldn't agree more. I did a bunch of cold outreach like a year ago, and I was doing all these like 15, I was working with this company, and they were not great leads. So I was doing all these like 15-minute sales calls with people. And some of them ended up being like interesting people, but it wasn't the right lane. But I was talking with these, people that were in these large companies doing 50 mil a year in business. And I'm like, your site has like 10 broken links. Every button leaves the site. I mean, I'm like, dude, do you want to talk about having a podcast, or do you want me to give you a website audit? Because how are you this successful and your clients are like AT&T, Cisco, John Deere, and I'm like, your Instagram is linked to somebody else's Instagram off your company.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, right? And I think it speaks poorly of your brand when you don't have that together. Google even has statistics. 90% of all purchases, it really doesn't even matter what kind of product it is. People are going to go to your website and check you out. Who are you? What do you represent? Right. What does your brand, communicate? What value do you add? And content is a big, big, big part of that. And if those kinds of things are broken on your website, do you think that your sales team is going to be following up, or your customer service is going to be following up with any kind of quality? It puts a doubt in your prospect's mind. And you don't need doubt when they're starting to look at who to decide to purchase from, right? And those are things that can be fixed, right? Relatively easily.
Very easily. I mean, maybe if you have a larger company, it's harder to make things happen quickly. But I mean, understanding how people, I'm a big sucker for AppSumo. I'm always buying stuff I don't need from them. But they had a program called Session Rewind. And what it does is it records the screen anytime somebody goes to your website. So once a week I go and I pour a glass of wine and I sit and I feel like a stalker. It's a little uncomfortable. I'm like, is this ethical? But I can see how people move around. I make real-time changes like right away. Like, oh, this is taking too long to load. Get rid of that video. Oh, people are hovering around here. And you see how frenetic people are. You can see how they don't read anything. That's the biggest takeaway. Nobody's reading anything. The way people scroll through the written content on my website, not blogs, right? But like the written sales stuff, no one's reading it. But it's been wildly helpful. But I agree. And I think, I always get in this conversation with people and they're like, don't worry about your website and logos. Just go sell your services. And like all these business coaches are telling people, don't worry about your website. And I think that's terribly flawed advice. I think people, it's like a dating app. They make a snap judgment, yes or no, within seconds, right? We know within seconds whether we're willing to listen to somebody or not. It's the same thing, I think, with your website. And I think your people's website is actively working against them, and they honestly have no idea.
I agree. I mean, should you be spending all the time on your website? No, of course not. It's a mix. There's a marketing mix, right? But it is incredibly important. This is the way of the world, and it's not going away. And especially if you have any kind of brick and mortar, they're going to go to your website and check you out before they're ever going to come to your brick and mortar. They won't even bother. 100%. So it's very important, right? It's also important because I think it educates your prospect so that by the time they're ready to speak to a sales team, that conversation is elevated. That conversation is more sophisticated, and it's going to be quicker, and they're going to make a decision with the sales team even faster of whether to continue or not. So I think it's very important. It's very important.
I love that we're having this conversation. I didn't know that this would be the conversation we would have, but I'm here for it because I'm big on websites and how is that working? And do you have CTA buttons that actually go someplace? Are you responding to those things? Because, we actually get a lot of cold inbound business from Google because our SEO is optimized. And it's not like we paid some company $50,000 to do it. We just did, make sense SEO work on the website so that the right tags are there and that content can come in, because I think it does make a difference. And all of our rates are very transparent because I don't want to get on the call with a life coach who has $100 to spend Because then it's uncomfortable for both of us for me to say, well, it's 10 grand. And then, oh, shit, now it's really bad for both of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're both feeling uncomfortable. So I think you can eliminate that sales cycle, eliminate a lot of uncomfortable feelings, and let people decide if they're ready to work with you or not,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
then they show up ready,
Mm-hmm.
they show up
And
ready.
I think similarly, your content, if it's crafted really well, your SEO keywords are indicators, right? It tells you what people are interested in learning about. At least it's part of it. But the other part of it
Exactly.
is that your writer is going to bring you the most cutting edge, things that are happening. They're going to be crafting stories beyond just fact finding, in that content. So it's really important. And then how do you amplify it? Well, one of the best places to amplify it is on your own website, right?
Right.
So, and then
Right.
it brings you back. It becomes that lead loop, right? That people are coming back and continuing to come back, or they're coming back to learn more, or coming back to finally raise their hand to say, okay, I think I really am ready to ask questions of the sales team, because the basic questions have been answered on the
Have been
website or
answered.
in the blog, right? So that your sales team
Exactly.
isn't answering the basic stuff. They want to be answering the questions and having meaningful, in depth conversations a little bit farther down the funnel, so that
Exactly.
these people are ready to really be talking to a person in person, um, and doing a lot more in terms of unpacking what the problem is and then how your company can be the solution.
Exactly, because that's what the discovery call should be. It should be asking questions of the person,
Mhm.
not talking about your rates, right?
Yeah,
Like not talking, but asking
yeah.
questions. I love that we're having this it's like the analog versus digital. Like these are such one of my favorite books is the One Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb, and it's just like it's old, but it's still so relevant. It's like
Mhm.
I think every business owner should read that book once a year. It's like just core elements of customer service and business development, right, and marketing. And I think that we're getting so far down the track with AI and all these technological advancements, but if people can't go back to your website and fill out a form, if the thing links are broken, then none of that matters at all. So how are you navigating, coming from such a tried and true arsenal of experience
Mhm.
with your clients who are saying we want to use AI for everything, or how are you navigating this landscape between old school, new school, analog, digital?
Yeah,
How are you weathering
it's a
that?
it's a great question, and I think that nobody knows what the heck really is going to happen with AI. I mean, even today there was a press release that at I believe it was Chat GDP, the two executives that were in charge of um, looking at like the ethics of AI and how it's going to essentially affect humanity resigned. And around the world, you know, Chat GDP and other creators, Google, they're saying this is going to be kind of a just unbelievable change in humanity, and at a very, very fast pace. So but I think it's a great tool, just like any tool, right? It's a great tool. It will raise the bar and educate people so much quicker, and you can rely on it as an information source, right? That information is going to be available to all of us. The trick is, I think, is to have a critical mind, for one, to ask the right questions, just like when you're talking to another human being, right? Sometimes the
Exactly.
trick, or the skill, I should say, is to ask the right questions so you get more meaningful conversations. And that's even kind of the model, if you really boil it down to AI, is that you have to have the right prompts in order to get this wealth of all human knowledge to come back to you in a digestible way or a really valuable way. I think the other thing that we have to be really concerned about is that, well, so much. I'll get to that thought in a second. But not to lose your humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You can get all these facts, right? But facts are facts. It's about digesting them and giving insight and relating to people, other human beings. How do you still do that, right? And not just be overwhelmed in all the data and the facts. It's really about storytelling and how do you still preserve your humanity, right? Of compassion, of trustworthiness, of perspective, and not to lose that in this really tremendous time of AI and the tool. The other thing that I said I would come back to is that I really do worry about education. How are we going to educate the world's children in the time of AI when this tool is smarter than every human being? Not every human being, I should say. That's a misstatement. I mean, it's smarter than where a child is, right, in their development. And how do you motivate children to become experts and want to keep learning and do something with significance in their lives when this tool has all that knowledge? How do you gain your own knowledge and the motivation to continue to gain that same knowledge? I think that is very concerning to me. That is very concerning.
That's a good point. I mean, it's like being in high school and people are like, why do we need to learn math? I have a calculator.
Exactly. That's kind of what it is, but on a much larger scale. And yet these tools are only as smart as the human beings that have created all of this amazing information and all this information insight to train the tools, right? So what's left for humans to learn? And but it is about motivation. And you still, if you want to be a great engineer, you still need to learn calculus, even though you could probably you could program it into your the latest computer or the latest models. It's all there, right? But you need to know how it works in order to push the boundaries of our knowledge.
It's interesting when you were talking, and it kind of gave me a little spark of like hope for humanity, because it's not really active listening, but active asking. And I don't think we do enough of that. We just scroll, we just input in, it's like even when you go on dates or you're at a party or whatever, and it's like people don't ask a lot of questions, right? And so maybe one of the benefits of AI is it's making people really think about, what am I asking? I have to be really intentional about how I'm presenting myself and the information that I'm asking for. Maybe there's something good in there, but I agree. It's an interesting time.
It is a very interesting time. I think that it's critical thinking, right? I think even more so, part of our educational process is going to have to be even more sophisticated critical thinking skills, because you cannot accept everything that these AIs give back to you, because they actually hallucinate. And even today's news, they're saying, Google's AI tool is hallucinating even more, and they don't know why, and they don't know how to stop it. Well, think about that. What if it starts disseminating information that's not even true, and human beings start to accept it without that critical reasoning to be like, I don't know if that's
welcome
right.
to America.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting time to be alive.
It really is. So are you finding that these mid-sized companies doing 20 million plus, are they anxious to get into the AI game, or are they a little hesitant on it?
I think everyone is looking how to use AI, but it's a matter of where it is appropriate, right? And the speed at which that you adopt it. And nobody can tell you what that is. I mean, even at one of the, the next conference, it was last fall for Google, the advice really from this conference was that, well, just begin. You just have to begin, because it's the kind of the wild frontier. So I think that the trick is to figure out what tools are appropriate for your company to adopt. And there's just so many of them, and they're evolving so quickly. But at this point, it's really about productivity. how do you use these tools to increase productivity of your
Mm-hmm.
staff, right? Um, so, and I think that's the challenge right now, is to decipher, as these tools are being built and as they're getting more sophisticated, what's really appropriate for your company to adopt, and then to retrain your staff, because nobody's had this before, they're just, everyone's learning it now, at least the people in the workforce. Our university students, it will be part of their curriculum. It has to be, in order to prepare them for it, the
Well,
working
yeah,
world.
because they're gonna have to recognize what's real, what's
Yeah,
fake, what's. I mean, we all learn pretty quickly with the extra fingers on hands with the AI pictures. You can like spot the fake ones right away. Although there's certainly lots of accounts on Facebook with like clearly AI generated
yeah.
tiny homes, whatever. So, we got to get rid of all that. But it'll be really interesting to see. From a productivity standpoint, I think AI can be really great because it can disseminate information that you're giving it and just do that much faster than a human could.
Hmm.
But I think looking for information from it is a tricky game because, I was using Jasper for a few years. They're like a copywriting AI tool. They're
Yeah.
like $180 a month, not cheap. And I asked it to rewrite my bio, and it had me graduating from Harvard. And I was like, I wish that was true. Working for Nike, I was like, well, you just lying your whole face off over here,
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I was like, this isn't even a summary. This is a bold-faced lie. Maybe there's another Molly Ruland in the world that did all those things, but it
Maybe.
wasn't me. And I just had it rewriting my content. So yeah, it'll be. But I guess we're dealing with this fake news and everything anyway, right? Like, so it's going to be the age of
Yeah.
investigation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Mm-hmm.
validating whether facts are really true. That's, I think, what's going
Crazy.
to be the case.
Crazy, crazy. What a time to be
What a
alive. All
time to
right.
be
Well,
alive.
we are cranking through this interview, so I'm going to ask you a few speed round questions
Sure.
before we finish this thing. So, can you give our listeners a quick tip for improving their SEO on their website?
Yeah, I would say invest in some tools that can help you learn what SEO keywords you should be going after. There's also some great tools that you can do an audit. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
amazing that you just put in your URL and you can get an audit of your website, and it gives you very specific grades on different parts of your website so that you know what to start to improve. I would say that there's a lot of companies out there that can help you improve your SEO at a really pretty low cost. We're talking anywhere from $200 a month to $2,000 a month, which is very reasonable, even if you're a solopreneur. That $200 a month, right? Let alone a company that has a few million in revenue. So I would say invest in
Purge.
some basic tools to help you along your way. I think it also helps you as you're dealing with the folks that are actually going to be doing the improvements, that you know what you want,
What you
and
want.
that you can actually discern and tell them what is a higher priority over a lower priority. You'll educate yourself. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that is important because you can hire somebody on Fiverr who can do more damage to your SEO than good. So you should
Yeah.
have some knowledge. You don't need to be an SEO
No.
expert because even SEO experts aren't SEO experts because Google keeps changing everything.
Yeah.
I'm in some SEO groups and they're all like, "Oh, Jesus Christ! Once again, all the work we just did is irrelevant now." It's a constantly changing game, but there are some great tools. So I think that's really good advice
Hmm.
for sure. All right, favorite content format: blog, video, or podcast?
That's a hard one. I think I would still say video, because that's how people want to consume things. I think you can learn a lot about a person by their expression, how they deliver things, whether you will be able to relate to them, right? Especially in my case, if you're a fractional CMO, would you be able to relate to me? And I think that you can get a much better idea of that through video, right? You can pick up on a person's personality. And,
Mm-hmm.
of the candidates that you might be considering, who are you going to be able to communicate best with, right? Who do you want to work with? People want to work with pleasant people, right? There's so many of us with a lot of knowledge, but do you have similar personalities so it really facilitates the collaboration?
Yeah, 'cause it's like that snap judgment. You know right away if you want to learn more and hang out more with that person. And
Mm-hmm.
I think even through doing this show, it's nice for me to be able to talk to people like you, because I'm sure somebody's listening going, man, this is exactly who we need to hire. Listen to this experience she's had. She's saying all the things that we just brought up in our last meeting.
Yeah.
And so what a great way to really learn about what you've done and what you're doing, and listen to an episode of this podcast even. For people to really learn, it says so much more than just like a LinkedIn picture or even a LinkedIn post. It's so much more, right? The nuance of it all. I come from a pretty large Irish Catholic family, so if you're a little bit sarcastic, I'm in there. You know what I mean? We can't take ourselves so seriously that we can't laugh, because
Exactly.
good Lord, life is hard, so we gotta laugh our way through it sometimes.
Yeah, I think the other thing with video is that it's a very small leap to actually then having an online meeting, right? Because
for sure,
I work with companies all over the world. Some of my best clients are in the UK. I've never met them in person. We talk like this, and we get phenomenal results. And even my agencies that I select globally, right? They're in Australia, they're in Canada, they're in India, they're in Pakistan, they're in Dubai, they're in the UK, wherever the case may be. And this is how we're doing business. So if we could communicate virtually, right? It's just a small leap from a video that you see to a video meeting.
I agree. I recently was at a podcast convention and met a couple of guys that I have only worked with online, and I was like, wow, you guys are so much taller than I thought. 'Cause you just have no concept of what someone you just see from their shoulders up the whole time. So
it's true.
It was kind of wild. Like, I've known you for 2 years, but I've never been in the same physical space as you.
It's true. I've had that same experience. I've had that same experience where I've been working with people for 2 years, and we, then finally we meet at a convention or something. And I'm rather tall. Wow. I'm almost 5'9", barefoot, right? So if you're going to a convention, I'm going to wear heels, right? Well, I'm like 6 foot. They're like, wow.
Yeah.
They grow big in the Midwest, don't they?
Me too. Me too. I'm 5'10". I don't wear heels though, because I'm more of a sneakers kind of a gal personally, but that's too funny. Well, we'll have to hang out at the next convention that would call us both there. We could be the tall girls.
The tall girls in the back. I've always been in the back of the pictures too, growing up.
Same. I prefer it that way, though. I'm good with that. Fun fact: when I was born, I had like Benjamin Button, but in reverse. So I grew super fast. So they said I would look like a 5-year-old by the time I was 2. Yeah. And then I wouldn't stop growing, or I would stop growing, and then I would be dead in 20 years. But I didn't stop growing, so I've been 5'10" since 3rd grade. So, yeah, I know. Okay. Very tall, very tall. Yeah, I was always at the beginning or the end of every line my whole life. You know what I mean?
I too. I know exactly. I had the same experience. Absolutely.
Hey, it works though. It helps. It helps with presentations, right?
That's right. It commands
the room, so you got to use it to your advantage. So, okay, one last question. If you could work with any company you wanted, if you could craft any kind of a marketing campaign, who would you work with?
Oh my God. That's a hard question. There's just so many out there that would be interesting. I don't think I could name someone in particular or name a company in particular, but I find that the companies that have had some success, right? And let's say they're a $10 million company, they're doing something right. They're doing great, really. But I find that they usually need someone like me, a fractional CMO, when they need to get to the next level of growth. Right? And they may have a few marketing practitioners inside the company full time, but they're wearing so many hats, or they don't have the correct mix of people based on a new strategy that I would put together to help them get to their growth goals, right? So it's really those companies that are like, you know what, in 2 years, I want to go from 10 million to 25, million. And the other component is that they are ready and willing to make some changes and to invest in marketing. It's an investment. There is no doubt about it that you have to spend money to make money. But marketing has become so digitally focused and so analytically focused that we can track with great granularity what's successful and what's not, and very quickly determine that definitely ahead of time. What are we going to go after? How many leads are we going to get based on the investment, and track against that and shift things to do more what we're doing great, and maybe dial down some things that maybe we tested and didn't work so great. But you can learn that very quickly. So I would say companies that are ready to get to their next level of revenue and are truly ready to bring someone in to make suggestions, and hopefully they will listen to that, right? Based on my experience, based on what has worked at other companies as well. Because I find sometimes companies say, oh yes, we know we have to do marketing. We have to get to this next level of revenue. But when I start digging in and start making suggestions, they're like, oh, no. You're trying to make
We've always done it this way.
Yeah, we've always done it this way. Or, oh, no. You're trying to make us too big of a company and, make us, function like a Google. No, that's not even possible. It's not even possible, because there's thousands of marketers that have pulled off that kind of growth and innovation at Google or other companies. And I only suggest things that companies at their stage of growth are ready for. So it's really about being ready to make change, right? And investment.
I love it. It's like podcasting too. I don't try to sell our services to people who are not ready. If I'm trying to convince you the value of a podcast, just go join a group on Facebook or something. I'll see you when you're ready.
Yeah.
I only work with the people who are like, we see the value, we understand how it can work, we just don't know how it could work with us, and we need you to help us. But I'm not dragging anybody along. No. They got it.
Or they just don't know how to make it happen, right? They're like, we know that this podcast would be really valuable, but my company is to produce widgets. I don't know how to produce a podcast, let alone hire the people to come in on the technical side to actually produce it, right? It's just so outside of their scope of experience. So that's why they bring me in, is that they're like, no, we just don't know how to get there, right?
We just don't know how to get there. Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, Kari, I wish that my company was doing 20 million a year so I could hire you, because you're awesome. And I mean, 35 years experience, there's just no way of getting around that. That's just so much value. And I think in such a rapidly moving world, and everything is changing so fast, but there's certain tenements, right? There's certain things that will always hold true, right? Customer service, brand building, all of that. And with AI, all that, that's fine. But like the basics are still there. And working with somebody like you, I am positive would bring tremendous growth to any company that brings you on. And I'm sure anybody who is of that size company listening to this recognizes that in you right away.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, that's kind of the sweet spot. But believe me, I've worked with startup companies where, maybe they've finally gotten some seed money to invest in marketing. And the beautiful thing about a fractional CMO like myself is I don't cost as much money as hiring a full-time, CMO.
Agency.
I'm working for you, let's say 10 hours a week, but solely focused on strategy and implementation. So I'm laser focused on these things, and we make progress very quickly because, dare I say, I'm not distracted by other things that a CMO internally needs to do, like building their team and, whatever, performance reviews and those kinds of things. I'm coming in focusing on growth, and figuring out that strategy and the plan of implementation within 90 days. And then we start to implement. And, it's been successful many times over. So I definitely work with startups as well. Give me a call.
Well, that's good to know. If you heard it here, folks, you can hit her up and she can come give you 10 hours a week, which I feel would be a great investment in anybody's company, with all the experience and knowledge that you're bringing. You're definitely you're not the old guy in the room either. You're very up on the new technology. You have really great opinions on that, and that really matters because there are some dinosaurs in the industry, right? But as women, we have to work harder. We have to be better, faster, smarter, stronger, all the things to stay on top. And you are clearly doing that. So thank you for taking time to hang out with me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Molly. I enjoyed it too. I feel really honored that you would have me on your podcast. So thank you.
Of course. Hey, anytime you want to talk smack about websites, I'm into it. I'm way too into it. I was even thinking about starting a podcast called It's Not You, It's Your Website, and like ripping people's websites apart. Yeah. But then I was like, that might not be good marketing. But I mean, there's endless material out there to choose from.
There really is.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And kind of along those lines too, is that what I find too are smaller companies, they know they need a website. So they're like, okay, I will hire a graphic designer to build a website. And the graphic designer does. And it looks very nice. Knows SEO, Zippo, nada. Nothing. So once again, it's beautiful, but it's not working very hard for you. So with that same amount of money, we could have hired an offshore web designer, and all of my strategy and knowledge, in my mind of what I've done time and time again, and develop something that is a lead magnet, right? Versus just being a pretty picture. And that's really the difference. Exactly. Yeah.
We build websites, and I was guilty of that too because I didn't understand, and then as I learned more for my own website, I realized, how many other smaller shops are building websites for people that are that is exactly it. It's like a fake front. You know what I mean? It looks really pretty. The contact forms aren't linked. There's no follows on half the pages. I mean, there's real problems in there. And I think a lot of well-intended people like myself, I was building people nice websites. I thought I was doing a great job, but now, I mean, our checklist for completion is like 27 items long because okay, it's done. It's pretty. Now we got to test every link, test every form, connect all the analytics, connect the Google Tag Manager. There's a lot more work that has to happen once you've said, okay, everything looks good. Absolutely. Then the team has 4 more days worth of work before we hand over that website. Right. And I only know that because I care and I don't want to give my clients a crappy website that doesn't work. But I know that I think probably 90% of the smaller operations out there are doing exactly that.
Yeah, and it's not a one-time execution. On SEO, day one is launch, but then there's many things that if you do on a continual basis to outsmart your competition and get those Google spiders, that's really the leader, not Bing, to serve your website up on page 1. That's the name of the game, because 90 some odd % of readers don't go to page 2. So you really have to work on continuing to make sure that you are ranking on page 1 because those are the people that are going to visit your website. And once they're there, they're going to get information they need. So.
Exactly. Well, I said this recently, and I think it might be the most quotable thing I've ever said. I said, websites are like haircuts. No matter how good it is and how much you love it, you're going to need another one sooner than
Very true. Good analogy.
It's a living and breathing thing, It constantly needs updates and changes and more SEO and more content and new design. And at this point, if your website is more than 2 years old, it looks archaic, sadly.
Yeah, it's true. And sadly. The SEO, it is a black box. Google is tweaking their algorithm. It doesn't tell anybody what it is.
Constantly.
And you have to you figure it out as you go and what to do and how to do it, really by not mistakes, but by hints of what they've changed, and then you adjust. But it's hugely powerful for your company to do it well. Absolutely.
I agree. And for anybody, even on our own website, we just did really basic SEO for podcast booking, and I get 2 or 3 discovery calls a week, inbound cold calls from people Googling podcast booking, sifting through the ads, and then I'm like the second or third option. Mm-hmm. And then they go to my website, it makes sense, and there's a clear CTA. And we're not spending a ton of money on SEO. Right. So for anybody who's wondering, does it really make a difference? Well, let me tell you, it does. It really does, especially if you have your keywords dialed in the right way, because there's only so many options, right? And it's not just podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Podcast, it's podcast booking.
Right.
Very specific.
And there's also things that you can do with local SEO, too. If you're a brick and mortar store or brick and mortar business, right?
Exactly.
I mean, one of my clients was a small company, it's family owned, and they had a catering business. It was second generation, and they pivoted the company with the second generation to produce beautiful organic lunches, school lunches for local schools here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Well, this was a classic example. They had just spent quite a bit of money on getting their website redesigned. It was beautiful, no SEO. And they're like, what? We just spent like thousands of dollars. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, but we've got to tweak these things. And this is why you're not finding clients. It's because you don't have any local SEO. So when somebody's typing in school lunches, your website's not coming up. So we did that SEO. We changed some things around, and within 6 months, they had to move to a bigger kitchen facility because we doubled the business. Right? I mean, so it does work. It does work. It does work.
I love that an industry giant like you who's worked with so many people, and sometimes it really is the simplest little things that can really move the needle in your business. So even working with huge companies, like these small things can make a big impact in a small
and
business.
In that case, we're talking a budget that was a few $1,000s. I mean, it was less than 10. It was maybe $6,000 to bring in the SEO experts and do this, that, and the other, and it made a huge impact. Not everything is massive amount of money. It depends on what you're trying to do. Right.
Well, it depends on who you're asking to do it too.
That is very true.
There's a big pendulum swing in current market rates for different services these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Neither here nor there. Well, Kari, I've taken so much of your time, but I really enjoy hanging out and talking with you. You have so much knowledge, so thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with me and with the Camp Content audience of the podcast. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Let's do it again.
Thank you. Yes, anytime. Okay. We'll talk smack about people's websites. Okay, so on that note, thank you for tuning in to Camp Content. I appreciate your time and that you chose to spend it with us today, me and Kari. And if you can't tell that she's bringing a whole lot of knowledge, then you were not paying attention. 35 years. Listen, I love all the newfangled tech and everything else. I'm a big tech nerd myself, but there's nothing that experience can replace. So if you're interested, hit Kari up in the links below. Everything is there. You can even get a marketing assessment that she will do for free. And all of that information is in the links below. So on that note, thank you for tuning in to Camp Content. And until next time, be excellent to each other. And I will see you on the internet. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Camp Content. This is Molly.
And this is Matt.
And we are Heartcast Media, a.k.a. Camp Content, and we appreciate all of your support. If you found this content valuable, please comment on social media, LinkedIn, wherever you find us, and we will make sure to comment back.
And be sure to go on and subscribe and like on your favorite platforms, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, you name it. Leave us that subscription. Leave us that good review.
We'll love you forever. So until next time, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.